The Battle of Marathon, 490 BC. The Battle of Marathon stands as one of the defining moments in the struggle between the Greek city-states and the Persian Empire. In the late summer or early fall of 490 BC, most often, placed by modern calculation about September 12th, a citizen levy from Athens, joined by a small but resolute contingent from Plataea, met and defeated a Persian expeditionary force on the coastal plain of Marathon, northeast of Athens. The victory preserved Athenian independence at a time when its young democratic order was still fragile, and became an enduring example in Greek memory of free citizens fighting for their own land. Background and causes. In the generation before Marathon, the expanding Persian Empire under Darius I absorbed the Greek cities of Asia Minor and extended its influence across the Aegean. When those Ionian cities rebelled between 499 BC and 494 BC, Athens and Eretria sent limited aid, including ships that helped attack Sardis. Darius swore to punish the mainland cities that had interfered, secure the Aegean approaches, and deter future revolts. This punitive and strategic aim set Persia on a collision course with Athens. After the revolt was crushed, Persian operations moved west. A campaign in 492 BC reasserted control in the northern Aegean, and in 490 BC Darius dispatched a seaborne expedition under Datis and Artaphernes. Their fleet advanced through the islands, received submissions, treated Delos with ritual respect, coerced Charistus, and besieged Eretria. Eretria fell after betrayal from within. Its population was deported. With Eretria subdued, the expedition turned towards Attica. The exiled Athenian tyrant Hippias traveled with the Persians, advised a landing on the broad coastal plain of Marathon in eastern Attica, close to Eretria and well suited for operations. Athens had only recently reorganized its government under the democratic reforms of Cleisthenes in 508 to 507 BC, and could not count on a wide mainland support. Plataea honored its alliance and sent its full hoplite muster, but few others moved. Athens dispatched the runner, Phidippides, to Sparta with an urgent plea. The Spartans replied that they could not march until after the full moon because of the sacred festival of Carneia, leaving Athens and Plataea to hold the Persians alone for several days. While the two armies watched each other, the 10 elected Athenian generals reportedly split on whether to attack or wait for Sparta. Under Athenian procedure, the polemarch, Callimachus, also held a vote. Miltiades, who had experience with Persian warfare and feared the cost of delay, persuaded him to support immediate action. Generals who backed Miltiades yielded their turns of command, clearing the way for a coordinated strike. Modern calendrical work places the battle about September 12th, 490 BC, though the exact day cannot be proved with certainty. Opposing forces and leadership. The army that marched from Athens to Marathon was a citizen levy of heavy infantry drawn from the hoplite class and reinforced by the full muster Plataea could send. Ancient figures cluster near 10,000 Athenians and about 1,000 Plataeans. Some modern estimates trim the Plataean number to a few hundred, so total Greek strength is usually placed around 10 to 11,000. Herodotus stresses that the Greeks advanced without cavalry or archers, a point that helps explain their concern about fighting on ground favorable to Persian mounted troops. Athens never forgot Plataea's decision to stand with it in 490 BC. The Persian expedition sailed under royal orders from Darius and was commanded by Datis and Artaphernes. It drew on many subject peoples of the empire and moved by sea with an accompanying cavalry arm. Numbers are uncertain. Modern ranges often fall between roughly 15,000 and perhaps 25,000 infantry with a mounted contingent, though higher popular figures circulate. However counted, Persian mobility and arrows posed a serious threat on open ground. Athens fielded a rotating board of 10 strategoi whose command shifted by day, a system that could produce stalemate in crisis, when the generals divided evenly on whether to fight. Miltiades appealed to the polemarch Callimachus, whose vote could break the tie. Herodotus reports that Callimachus sided with Miltiades. The generals of his party surrendered their days of command, effectively placing the attack in Miltiades' hand. In the deployment that followed, Callimachus held the honored right. The tribal contingents filled the center, and the Plataeans took the left. Later traditions associate Themistocles and Aristides with the command group, but the contemporary narrative centers on Miltiades and Callimachus. For Persia, the expedition promised punishment of Athens and the reassertion of imperial authority, and Hippias hoped for restoration under Persian patronage. For Athens, the stakes were political survival and defense of its new democratic system. For Plataea, they included an alliance that would be remembered for generations. These motives shaped the resolve on both sides as the armies faced one another on the Marathon Plain. Battlefield geography and the standoff at Marathon. The Marathon Plain lies in eastern Attica, about 25 miles northeast of Athens. It is a broad coastal flat backed by higher ground and edged at its ends by marshy tracts that restrict movement. Yet it offers ample space for deploying large bodies of troops. Its nearness to the Euboean Channel made it accessible to a fleet that could support operations from the sea. Persian commanders Datis and Artaphernes, influenced by the exiled Athenian tyrant Hippias, chose Marathon in part because the ground was good for cavalry. Ancient testimony notes this part of Attica as best for horsemen, and modern historians routinely point to the open plain as attractive to a force that relied on mounted troops and archers. The bay also allowed secure beaching of ships while probing Athenian politics. When news of the landing reached Athens, the citizen army marched out and took position inland to block the exits toward the city. The Athenian camp stood in the precinct of Heracles on the western side of the plain, anchoring the road network. The Plataeans joined there in full force, and the combined army watched the Persians across the open ground. For days, the armies faced one another. The Persians could wait, hoping fear, faction, or local support would open Athens, and their cavalry promised an advantage if the Greeks came down onto level ground. The Athenians waited for Sparta, yet risked giving the invaders time to exploit their strengths. Because the Greeks had no cavalry, the threat of Persian horse and the constricting marshes figured heavily in their councils. Some scholars think the Persian cavalry was absent or redeploying at the critical moment. Others argue it was present but unable to act effectively. The Athenians eventually resolved to strike, while they believed the mounted threat was reduced. Decision to attack and battle deployment. With the Persian camp on the shore and the Athenians and Plataeans holding the inland exits, the deadlock in the Athenian command had to be broken. Miltiades argued that delay might invite internal division and give the Persians time to use their cavalry. He appealed to Callimachus, the polemarch, whose vote could decide the issue. Callimachus agreed, and the generals who supported Miltiades yielded their turns of command so that he could coordinate the coming fight. The Greek line was arranged with care. Callimachus held the place of honor on the right, the tribal contingents filled the middle in sequence, and the Plataeans extended the left. To cover the broad Persian frontage, the Greeks lengthened their own line, thinning the center and deepening both wings. Herodotus says the center became the weakest point while the wings were drawn up in many ranks. The intent was to prevent being outflanked and to give the wings the weight to break through lighter troops opposite them. When the omens proved favorable, the Athenians advanced. Herodotus reports that they ran the last stretch, not less than 8 stadia, which is just under a mile, and that the Persians thought such a charge reckless because the Greeks had neither cavalry nor archers. The run cut the time spent under arrow fire and reduced the window in which Persian horse could intervene. The actual status of the Persian cavalry at the moment of contact remains debated. Some traditions and reconstructions hold that the horse had been withdrawn or were re-embarking for a move toward Athens. Others, including the interpretation advanced by Peter Krentz, argue that cavalry was present but that Greek speed and terrain limited its effect. Either way, the Athenians struck when the cavalry threat seemed reduced, and that timing mattered. Battle narrative. Around September 12th, 490 BC, the Athenian and Plataean hoplites came off their high ground and advanced against the Persian line on the Marathon Plain. Herodotus says the distance between the armies was not less than 8 stadia, and that the Greeks charged at a run, a method he had not seen Greeks use before. The rapid advance shortened exposure to Persian arrows, and seized the moment when Persian cavalry was not in position to intervene decisively. Because the Persians stood on a broad front, the Greeks had thinned their center to stretch the line and had deepened both wings. At impact, the stronger Persian contingents in the middle pushed back the shallow Greek center. On the flanks, however, the reinforced Athenian right and Plataean left quickly broke the lighter troops opposite them. Maintaining order after their local successes, the Greek wings wheeled inward against the Persian corps, still driving the center. The resulting pressure from front and both flanks produced a rough double envelopment. Many Persians fled toward the sea or into the marshes at the ends of the plain, where large numbers were cut down or drowned. Fighting at the ships was fierce. The polemarch, Callimachus, was killed there, and later tradition preserves the story that the Athenian, Callimachus, seized a vessel before being struck down. The Greeks captured 7 ships before the rest of the fleet pulled away. Though beaten on the field, the Persian commanders tried to turn the campaign by striking Athens directly. The fleet rounded Cape Sunion and headed for Phaleron, but the Athenian army force marched back from Marathon and arrived in time to stand between the city and the ships. Seeing the defenders in place and having suffered heavy losses, the Persians abandoned the attempt and sailed away. The Spartans, delayed by religious observance, reached Attica after the battle and visited the field in acknowledgement of the Athenian achievement. Casualties and battlefield results. Greek losses were astonishingly light. Herodotus gives 192 Athenians killed and does not provide a Plataean figure. Later tradition often adds 11 Plataeans, but the ancient record is uncertain. The important point is that the Greek army remained largely intact and able to move immediately after the battle. Herodotus reports about 6,400 Persian dead counted on the field. That tally cannot include men who drowned in the marshes or were lost at sea in the rush for the ships, so actual losses were higher, but impossible to measure. He also records that the Greeks captured 7 Persian ships. Callimachus fell in the fighting at the shore. Other Athenian officers, including Stesislaus, also died. The story of Callimachus losing his hand while grasping a ship's stern became part of later legend. Whatever the precise totals, Persian casualties were heavy relative to the small defending force. The treatment of the dead was extraordinary. Instead of bringing the fallen back to the public cemetery at Callimachus, the Athenians cremated their 192 dead on the field and heaped an earthen tumulus, the Soros, over the ashes. Nearby, a smaller mound was raised for the Plataeans, whose bodies were inhumed. A victory column marked the site. The heroic style of these burials deliberately evoked Homeric precedent and turned the plain itself into a civic memorial. Archaeology has confirmed the literary account. 19th century excavations in the Soros revealed a thick ash layer with burned human bone and offerings. A 1970 excavation of the Plataean mound identified inhumed skeletons with funerary goods. Modern Greek cultural authorities continue to present the site as the resting place of the 192 Athenians and their Plataean allies, and it remains a focal point for visitors. Because the army lost so few men, it could leave a detachment to tend the dead and rapidly march back to block the Persian fleet at Phaleron, helping secure the strategic outcome of the campaign. Conclusion. The Battle of Marathon, fought about September 12th, 490 BC on the coastal plain about 25 miles northeast of Athens, saw a citizen army of Athenians and their Plataean allies defeat a Persian expedition commanded by Datis and Artaphernes. By attacking first and amassing strength on their flanks, while accepting a thinner center, the Greeks broke the Persian line, drove the invaders to their ships, captured several vessels, and inflicted thousands of casualties while losing 192 Athenians and an uncertain but small number of Plataeans. The victory saved Athens from immediate punitive conquest for its role in the Ionian Revolt, and protected a still young democratic government that might otherwise have faced restoration of a Persian-backed tyranny under Hippias. Because the army remained effective after the fight, the Athenians marched quickly back toward the city and stood ready when the Persian fleet reached Phaleron, prompting the invaders to withdraw. Marathon, therefore, checked the first Persian invasion of mainland Greece. The upset shattered the aura of Persian invincibility, boosted confidence across the Greek world, and helped shape the political climate in which Athens would invest in broader military preparedness before Persia returned in 480 BC. In Athenian memory, the battle became a touchstone of civic courage and an early proof that disciplined citizen hoplites could beat imperial troops in set battle. The tumuli raised over the Athenian and Plataean dead turned the battlefield into a lasting memorial. Over centuries, the separate legend of a messenger run from Marathon to Athens, fused with Herodotus' story of the long-distance courier Phidippides, inspiring the modern marathon race, whose standard, 26.2 mile length, is a later development. The actual distance from Marathon to Athens is about 25 miles. However, embellished in later retellings, Marathon remains a genuine turning point in the Greco-Persian struggle and an enduring emblem of the citizen-soldier ideal.